Real Talkers. We're here tonight live. It's been a long time since we last saw you live. We did pre-record the last one, and that was such an awesome episode where you guys joined us, and we got comments over the last couple of weeks. I'm Paula, I'm one of your hosts for this evening, and joining us tonight is my other host, who is Gay. If you want to introduce yourself.
Okay. That was very tricky. Who is Gay? I think what she meant to say is her name is Gay.
Yeah.
And of course we've got Kitty.
Yes.
So tonight we've got a really interesting night for you. We're just so looking forward to this, and it's called Against All Odds. And Against All Odds has come about because we had a chat, and I said, you know what, we had a newspaper in Rotorua that I used to manage, and once a month what we would do is we would do a page on Against All Odds, and these were people that had gone through really tough times. There'll be people out there that have been through a tough time, but you know what, you've come through the other side. So tonight when you hear our guest that we've got coming on tonight, you'll be absolutely amazed at what has happened in her life and how she's actually come through. So, Kitty, we're going to leave it to you.
Yes, hi everyone. It's great to have you join us tonight. Now, we are excited. We've got, as you can see, there's another chair. We've got a special guest chair here. Now, we've got a beautiful young lady who's joining us tonight. Now, this young lady has had a lot of different challenges in her life, and to be honest, when I think about her story, even just one of the challenges is enough to, you know, validate you to have overcome things against all odds. But she's overcome quite a few things in her life, right from birth, her childhood. She was actually born with a physical impairment and actually had a missing bone in her leg, to the point where her parents were actually encouraged to amputate her leg. So yes, that's pretty huge. But then even following on from there into her teenage years, overcoming alcohol addiction, drugs, and even to the point of homelessness and despair. And then even as recent as 3 years ago, a really tragic situation she went through with someone really close to her that she loves. But I'm not going to say too much more, but I just want you to understand and see how much this beautiful woman has overcome, and I'm going to introduce her to you, and that is the beautiful Ariana Vahua.
That's wonderful.
Welcome, Ari.
Hi.
It's good to have you here with us on Real Talk, and we're so glad that you're here to share your story with us.
Oh, thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Aris, as I did a little bit of an introduction on you, and I just shared with people, right from the beginning when you were born with a physical impairment. And do you want to just share a little bit more with everyone about that?
Yeah, so like Pastor Kitty said, when I was born missing my fibula, which meant that as I grew, my leg didn't grow, it didn't keep up. It wasn't only the bottom half of my leg, but also the top half of my leg, my femur as well. So through my childhood, obviously I was different because I couldn't keep up with the other kids, couldn't keep up with all the cousins, you know. I always had to try harder, I had to fight to kind of not be seen, but just to keep up, you know, to be there, do what everyone else was doing. And so from a baby, I was having to go back and forth from the hospital, having, you know, things done to my leg, braces. I had to wear a shoe that was built up. But over time, as I grew, like I said, my leg didn't keep up. So at the age of 8, I had to go through my first surgery.
So 8 was the first time you had surgery on your
leg? Yeah, I was 8 years old when I had my first surgery, and that was, they weren't minor surgeries. These surgeries went on for like, you know, 6 hours. They were really big. So what they would do is they had to, you know, to lengthen the leg in itself is really big. So they, you know, they have to cut your leg and put these big braces on your leg and extend it. But these these braces, you have to have them on for about a year, and that's just with the leg, and that's open wounds.
Yeah.
And so I suffered from, you know, infections, multiple infections all the time. You know, I had to be on crutches for a year at a time, but not only that, after they took it off, I'd have a cast, and then there was the rehabilitation, which could take up to, you know, a year before I was walking again. So I'd be on crutches for 2 years at a time, easy.
Wow.
And it was, well, I guess I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
But like I said, I had to fight to try and keep up. You know, you don't really want to be different.
Yeah.
Even as a young child, you just want to be like everyone else.
So it becomes like a physical challenge, but then also even emotionally and mentally, you know, growing up as a young girl, that's what you would have
Yeah, I think when I think back now, I think it was always probably God, you know, preparing me for what was to come.
Yeah.
But I think, it was hard at the time, but now I look back at it and I don't regret that, you know. I don't regret what's happened to my leg, and
Awesome, ladies.
Yeah.
And like I explained at the beginning when I introduced you, was that it was actually quite severe, and the extent that your parents were encouraged to, well, they
to amputate
your
leg. So not my entire leg, just from the bottom down where the fibula was missing, and that, you know, I guess for them would have been so easy. All they would have had to do was, as I grew, just keep continuing to make me a prosthetic leg.
Yes.
But I'm very happy my mother chose not to.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mum. But that was the first one when I was 8. So these surgeries continued throughout my childhood, right up into my adult years. So they went on for 14 years. I had these surgeries.
Wow.
And it wasn't just the lengthening. There were a lot of times where they had to correct mistakes that they had made. There were times where I had such bad infections that it had gone down to the bone, so they'd have to therefore remove and cut away, you know, big pieces of my leg, which is, I don't even think about it myself that much anymore, but going back, thinking about it now, you know, it's a hard thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that went on for 14 years, right up until I was 22. And, you know, they were going through lengthening the top half and the bottom half. I've still got bits of metal on my leg. I've got my leg has got a rod up here, rod down there. It's filled with plates and nails.
So you're one of those girls that goes through the metal
Airport.
detectors at the airport and goes, here's the explanation.
Yeah.
But do you mind if I ask you this? You know, when you're a teenager, you know, you get to a certain age and it's really important to you how you look and how your girlfriends see you, and, well, actually how the boys see you as well.
I think it
that's important as well. So you're a teenager and you've been through all of these operations, and obviously you said you've got scars and bits and pieces on that actual leg. So how do you think that affected you as a teenager? Do you think it knocked your confidence at all? Or?
Yep, I do. So like I said, I used to have to wear like built up shoes and stuff when I didn't have the surgeries. So I stopped wearing those. I refused to wear them. I didn't want to be seen, you know.
Different.
Different. And I'd wear things like baggy pants and long skirts, you know. And for years I tried to hide it, and it took a big, toll on myself, and on my confidence. So, you know, I started to, I left home when I was 15, and right from the day I left home, you know, I just thought, I started to do things like drinking. Drinking was a big problem for me, and I think that had a lot to do with trying to make myself feel confident. You know, they
Yes.
call it liquid courage.
Yes.
And it's so true. Like, when I think about myself, it is something that I did a lot to make myself feel good.
Confident.
Yeah, and confident. And when I say I did it a lot, I mean from a young age of 15, I was drinking heavily. Not just in the weekends at parties with your girlfriends or whatever, you know, because I had left home. I was pretty much allowed to do what I wanted, you know. I didn't have anyone telling me, you know, you can't do that, you know. I did what I wanted. So then I would be drinking a couple of times a week, you know, and then the drugs started. Actually, the drugs probably started before
Drinking.
before alcohol. Yeah.
Would you
'cause
say that it was like a an alcohol problem, or you like a could you choose not to drink alcohol, or did you feel it become more of an addiction?
it was an addiction. At the beginning, it was just a bit of fun. I liked the way it felt. I liked the way it made me feel. I was confident. Yeah, and people always say to me, "You're confident," but deep down, I was really self-conscious, and it was people who really know me will know that how much of a struggle it was to be different. You know, you just want to be accepted, and you want to look good. And as a young teenage girl, when you don't really have, you're still finding yourself.
Yeah.
You know, finding out who you are, how life works, how hard life can be.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I think not only was I drinking for a confidence thing, I think life started to become hard, and it just became something that I would do all throughout the week.
Yeah.
You know, and I just think back now, and I see 15-year-old girls now, and I think, oh no, you know, at that age I was up to.
But then you think you're a big adult and you're responsible and you're making your own decisions, and that's just how I want to live my life.
Yeah,
So where did that lead you, Ariana? Living a life in...
Oh gosh, that really took a toll on myself, but I've seen it taking a toll on my family. It came in between my relationship with my sister, between me and my friends. Like, I've always had good friends, but you know, you get up to all sorts of stupid things when you're in that state, you know, and I found that, you know, I was burning bridges, you know, and it's hurtful to even think of some of the stuff that I did to myself, but to other people along the way.
Well, to your parents. You know, I mean, it must have been very, very difficult for your mum and your dad. Well, your stepdad, because you said that your dad had passed away before you were born.
Yeah,
so
before I was
even
born.
way back then, it had started for you, hadn't it?
Yeah.
So you know, it must be very difficult for your mum and your stepdad to go through and watch you almost self-destructing.
I was self-destructing. I wouldn't. I would definitely say I was a ticking time bomb. So anyway, that from the age of 15 right up until I was probably like 25, I had alcohol addiction. The only time I think I ever stopped was when I was pregnant. But then it started up straight away after I'd had my children. You know, it didn't last very long. But
So all the drinking, all your, you know, your drug addiction, your alcohol addiction, how did that work for you, like money-wise? Were you, and you weren't living at home, so where were you living?
I lived with a lot of people over the years. Most of the time with my sister, but you know, as sisters do, we would constantly fight, and she kicked me out, and actually I can't blame her when I think about it. But I would turn to my friends. I've stayed with a lot of my friends' parents because I was always, you know, here, there and everywhere. I'd formed a lot of, well, my friends' parents were really, really good to me. They'd take me in when I needed somewhere to live. But at the end of the day, I was homeless, you know. I was living on people's couches. I was cruising around with a bag with all my stuff in it and my life in it, you know. As long as I had some clothes and some makeup, and you know, I'd just go to wherever the next you know, kind of
Couch
safe.
was.
Yeah, couch. Couch was. So eventually it led to homelessness, and that's. I was never out sleeping on the streets, but you know, I never had a home, and that went on for over a period of 10 years. Maybe like 8 years, but it was just me self-destructing. And then
you got and then you mentioned that you got pregnant.
And then I got pregnant. So I was 23 by then when I fell pregnant, and I was probably right. It was at the perfect time, because by then I had started doing things like I was doing a lot of A-class drugs. You know, I was doing meth and taking ecstasy and, you know, things like that, smoking a lot of dope, a lot of alcohol still. And I think I was probably at my lowest point right when I found out I was pregnant, because I had nowhere to go. I was living on my friend's couch, and she was a really good friend to me, but then she got a job in Auckland, and so she was moving away, and I had finally come to a place where I just didn't have anywhere else to go, because I'd been everywhere else. I'd been to all my different friends' houses. I'd been to their parents' houses. You know, it's you have to really humble yourself to go to your friends' parents and ask if you can live there, you know. And,
that's right.
But by then, I had come to just the end of the road, I found, and I had literally become homeless, because I had nowhere else to go by then. So she moved out, and I rang my partner. And I told him, and the father of my child, who was actually living in Australia. So, and I told him, and he said to me, "Why don't you go and live with my mum?" But I didn't know his family, because of course we had, I'd just fallen pregnant to him, but we were never together. So I wouldn't do that. And then, so I was pregnant and homeless. And I just didn't know what to do. But I think it came at the perfect timing, my baby, you know, every child is a blessing. And it really made me, it put things into perspective for me. Like, what am I doing now? I've got a child, you know. What am I going to do?
Well, it makes you a lot less selfish, doesn't it? You stop looking and thinking about your own self, and there's another little life now.
That's right.
That's a part of it.
So
that's already, look, what you've already shared with us, you know, from your childhood and into your teenage years and the struggles that you've been through. There was already a lot that you'd had overcome. Now, things moving along a bit further with your partner, I guess, and you had your baby, and things started to look like it was getting a bit better. You feel?
Things we're looking at.
As recent as only 3 years ago, there was quite a challenging time that you went through with your partner, isn't it? If you wanted to share.
So it was only 3 years ago. My daughter was 18 months old by then. We had our own house. He had moved home, and we were together, my partner and I. And one day he came home, and he'd injured himself at work, actually. So that night he couldn't walk, he couldn't move. So he went to the hospital in the ambulance, and we thought everything was fine. Like, we thought he'd just injured his back, and that he was gonna get better. But within, so I think it was about 5 days. Within 5 days, he just had this massive decline. He started to. He started turning grey. He's had this really bad flu, and we took him to the doctor, but they just said, you know, he's just got a flu. Sent him home to bed with some antibiotics, and I didn't think much more of it. But then 2 days later, I knew within me something was really, really wrong. He couldn't move, not because of a sore back, but because he was starting to phase in and out of
Yeah.
consciousness. He was just sitting on the couch. He was grey. He couldn't, you know, he couldn't move. And then he started to vomit like his, yeah. So by then I was really worried, and we took him down to the medical centre, and they still couldn't really give us an answer what was going on, but you know, they were doing his obs and they knew something was wrong, and then they sent him to the hospital on an ambulance, and that's kind of when,
Yeah.
you know, we started to
So it was a quick decline.
ask questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, very quick decline within the week. So went to hospital, and that same day, you know, they gave him some gas and some morphine. And he, you know, he's feeling
Just trying to numb the pain or
yeah, just
comfort.
to comfort
Yeah.
or ease
Yeah.
whatever was going on. And he was feeling great by then, you know. All the family was there, of course, because we were all concerned. We were having, you know, sitting in the hospital room, eating KFC,
Yeah.
laughing about
just
whatever.
thinking everything's fine.
Thinking
eh?
everything
Yeah.
was going to be fine. And
So
then
what happened, Ariana? What stage did it get to where you realised this is actually a very serious
yeah, they
issue?
sent him to the intensive care unit, and that's when, like, you know, I've been in and out of hospital for 14 years of my life, so I started, you know, I knew something wasn't right.
Yeah.
And then they started to put him on a ventilator and all this sort of stuff, and then anyway, the doctor walked in, and he'd been doing tests on Jaya, and they told us, well, they spoke with Jaya and us as a family, and said that he had a severe case of pneumonia, and that he had 20 minutes to decide whether or not he would choose to be put on into an induced coma. And the reason for this was that for him to have a better chance of surviving the sickness, that he had to go into an induced coma.
20 minutes.
Yeah,
That's what they said. So that's how important, or they could see that it was life-threatening.
Yeah,
Him to fight this all on his own.
yeah. So we were just blown away, really. You know, you sit there and you don't know what to say. You
Yeah.
don't know really what to think. 20 minutes is a long time to decide whether or not, you know, is this going to be the last time that he gets to see our daughter or be with us, you know, alive and conscious, have your last conversation, you know, the last time he might be able to, you know, give you a hug and a kiss. You know, 20 minutes is not a long time. And just also just not knowing really what the sickness was,
Yeah.
because we didn't know at the time. You know, I've heard a lot of people that have had pneumonia, but not to this degree.
Well, I think even for me personally, if I think of pneumonia, I don't necessarily think life-threatening.
No.
I just think, oh, gee, you better get up and get some antibiotics, better get well, get
That's
taken
right.
care of.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would have been quite a drastic change in your whole family's life and in your guys' lives.
Yeah.
So what did Jaya choose?
Well, he obviously chose, he listened to what the doctors were saying, and that if he was to have a better chance of surviving the sickness, that to go into the
Induced coma.
induced coma. So he did that, and that was hard enough as it was, you know, walking back into the room after they'd put him under.
Yeah.
And so we were in Rotorua Hospital, in the intensive care unit, and you know, would see the doctors come and go and the nurses coming and going, but each day, you know, you can feel you've got that instinct of knowing something's wrong.
It's
Yeah.
bad.
It's more, it's bad. It's more than what I think, or
Or
even
what
more
they're letting
than
off
I
be.
don't even think they realised at the beginning how bad it was getting. So he was in this state in Rotorua for 4 days. So, you know, and each day I was there, you know, and I just knew things weren't good at all. And then on the 5th day, the doctors came in and said to us Jaya's not getting better. He's not getting better anytime soon, and with the way, because his lungs continued to get worse, you know, I suppose they were, you know, he's on this ventilator, they know. And they said to us, if anything more, you know, if it was to continue to get worse, he could need to be put on life support, and they didn't have the equipment there, so they had to airlift him to Auckland Hospital. And by then, I think that's kind of sent me into a panic. I remember feeling very...
That must be really scary for you, because, you know, I mean, he's in hospital, he's in an induced coma, and now they're saying that he may have to go on to life support, and they're taking him to Auckland. So is that the point that you actually thought to yourself, I could actually lose this man?
Yeah, by then I started thinking, the fear had set in.
Yeah.
You know, that was horrible. But I did start feeling that way, because even just 4 days without him, watching him in that state, you know, hooked up to all these different machines.
Yeah, you can't talk.
Can't talk, and I started to get really scared.
So what did you pull on? What did you pull on to, like, you know, I've got to get through this and be strong for us both, I guess?
I think I've always been able to, I've always been a fighter after what I went through as a child and as a teenager. I think, like I said earlier, God was equipping me
for that's right, preparing you.
Yeah, what was to come, not that you'd ever think that that was going to be the case. But I had to really try, and I think I really kept myself together quite well, if I'm thinking right. You know, from what I remember. And for my daughter as well, I didn't really want her to see me
falling apart.
Falling apart, that's right. And so I chose to leave her in Rotorua, and I followed Jay up to Auckland. And we got there late, like 1 o'clock in the morning, and so the next day he was still in the same condition, still in a coma. And then that afternoon, his mother and I, you know, were exhausted. We went to where we were staying, and we both woke up to a phone call that Jaya's lungs had started to fail. They'd failed. And they had put him on life support, which was an ECMO machine. And this machine was hooked up, and what it had to do, because he no longer had lungs, it had to oxygenate the blood. It was so that it could continue to, you know, feed all our vital organs, which is what the lungs do. And I remember that feeling. That was horrible. I thought, you know, you never want to think worst, but it had finally.
Everything was just deteriorating. And
deteriorating.
Worse.
Yeah, worse and worse. So, you know.
So how long had it been now? Or was it pretty early when you'd taken him up
stages?
Okay.
So he'd only been in the coma then for 5 days. Yeah, 5 or 6 days.
So it was a pretty rapid decline.
Yeah,
from being, you know, staying home, sick, not well, in hospital, then needing to be airlifted in case of needing life support, and then very quickly he's on life support. So it was a rapid decline. So that would have been around the 25th of August, just to kind of give you a time. And then I remember as the days went on and ticked into weeks, and his body actually started to shut down. So I think, first his lungs, you know, and then it went to kidney failure, liver failure, and then he started to have heart failure as well. So it was just one thing after another, and I think by that time I had decided that fear
you know, had to go.
Yeah.
I couldn't fight for Jaya.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't stand there and stand in the gap for him like we do if I was just living in fear. So
True.
by then I was
True.
just, you know, I was scared, but not living in fear anymore, which I was at the beginning. I'd started to really pull on the Lord
Yeah.
for my strength,
Awesome, Addie.
for peace, for comfort, all those things. And that was probably around, I think, September the 3rd when they started to advise us that Jaya was not looking good. So not a long time, maybe 2 weeks in, they had started to tell us, you know, they were pulling us in for meetings and sending us letters that, you know, Jaya's body is starting to shut down, you know, he's septic.
So they're basically putting it to the family, it's something you need to consider in terms of where to from here.
So it's pretty much telling us to get his affairs in order.
Wow.
And he was only 23, you know, he was a young man. We only had an 18-month-old daughter.
Yeah.
So to be hearing that they were ready to kind of, you know, oh, sorry, you know, he's not looking good, you know, you might need to start considering that Jaya is more than likely to die, were pretty much the words. And I think that was the first time. So there was maybe 2 or 3 weeks in that they told us that they thought Jaya was going to die. Now there was one point there that the doctor did at another meeting, may have been the first meeting, I can't remember, that they told us that Jaya was the sickest man in New Zealand.
Wow.
So that kind of gives you a some sort of an idea of
How extreme.
how extreme it had become. Yeah, no, hearing those words, I think that was just like, that blew me away. I started to, you know, I'd have my days where, good days and bad days. I actually think I had more good days because I was just so reliant on God. You know, He was giving me, He was my strength.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You know, you go through a time where you are literally watching the person you love dying. You know, He was right before our eyes on that bed. He was fading away, you know, and I started to notice it in His body and his appearance. You know, you'd walk in the room some days and he looked like he was dead. It was that bad. I think people would see him, and I remember their faces and their reactions and
Just shock.
just the shock.
You know, Ariana, they say that people that are in a coma or in an induced coma, unconscious, can actually hear people speaking, even though you're not aware that they actually can. And I wondered whether or not that you at that point would be talking to him or praying for him or...
Oh yeah. I was praying for him. I would be playing him music, a lot of really beautiful songs that were getting me through, you know. I'd play them to him, but I was really, there were so many different times that Jaya would look like he was getting better and then he'd just crash, you know, and then the doctors, you know, like in the movies you see all the alarm bells going off and all the emergency doctors would come running in. I think I remember one time there might have been like 8 surgeons all in there diagnosing him, trying to figure out what was going on, and you know, we were just standing back, and even though it had become almost normal over the weeks, it never made it any easier. You know, it would really, your heart would be going.
Panic can kind of set in, can't it?
Panic would set in, but not once. I'm just so grateful to not only my family, who my mother and my father and we all grew up in church and, you know, strong
Beautiful.
Christians, strong faith, but not only my family, Jaya's family
Yeah.
as well. All, we all knew the power of what God can do, so through it all, we would gather together, and sometimes we would just stand with him and pray for him night and day, you know, lay hands on him, just standing in that gap, fighting for him. You know, people sometimes don't understand the power of prayer, but you can never underestimate, never ever. Like, I've seen it, you know, and the way it brings people together as well, you know, it's beautiful and it's powerful.
What's beautiful in hearing you speak about this is, like you shared, you were brought up in a godly home in church, and you're speaking about the strength that you drew on was God. But then we also heard your story of 10 years of choosing a life, and you were addicted to alcohol and drugs. But isn't God amazing? You know, God's always there. He was there with you from the beginning. He's there with you through those seasons, and he's there with you in that tough time when you need him the most. And that's what's beautiful. And even same with Jaya, as much as he wasn't necessarily walking with God during this time, he had family surrounding him, and prayer was powerful. So this had been going on already for a long time. How long was Jaya actually in his coma for?
So he was in a coma for 7 weeks, you know,
so a long time.
Yeah. So it felt like, you know, days rolled into weeks, which rolled into, you know, months by the end of it. And, you know, that still wasn't the end. There was still more to come at the end of it. So we had, by the 7th week, Jaya was
7 weeks in an
maybe
induced
6 weeks
coma. That's a long time.
I think it was 6 weeks in by then. Yeah, a long time, very long time to be away from your family, to be, you know, like I said, watching, you know, because he's a big guy, you know, I just watched him fading away right before our eyes. It was quite hard. After a few weeks, the first few weeks I didn't notice it, but after maybe a month or so I noticed it, you know, he just started to become frail. That was sad. I remember the first time noticing that his body was shrinking. I remember being really sad and crying about that, because that's when I kind of noticed that he was just fading away right before me. But 6 weeks in, by then we had another meeting with the doctors, and they said that by now they were pretty much saying he's done.
He's not going to make it.
He's not going to make it through. And it was sad for everyone, but I think even then, still in that space and time, I was still like standing there. I remember even in the meeting with the doctor, what she was telling me, and I just turned around and I said no, you know, no, because I chose not to, even though they prepare you for the worst, I chose not to allow it to dictate to me what was going to happen, because I know the truth, and I know the power of prayer and what God can do. And
so you, in this time, so you're basically given, the family was sat down for the final time and said, look, it's time to make this decision. It's been almost 7 weeks. Possibly it's time to turn the life support off. Is that really what it came to?
That's pretty much what it came down to by then.
And what did you, what was in you that was like, no? What were you standing on?
I was standing on faith.
Yeah,
you know,
that's lovely.
There's nothing else that you can stand on then when you're I didn't care about anything else. You kind of, everything else becomes non-existent. I didn't care about, you know, the only thing I cared about was being that person to bridge the gap between life and death for my husband, you know, even though there were a lot of us there.
Yeah.
We were all doing it. And
So as much as you couldn't do anything from
That's
a physical,
That's right.
what did you do?
so that night, as I remember, the final night that they had pulled us in the room and said to us, it's time to start considering switching the life support on.
Wow.
The machine can no longer, it had been running at full capacity for 6 weeks or 7 weeks, 6 weeks, and it's time to start considering the fact that Jay is not going to live. He's not going to make it. His body has started, it's shut down, you know. By then it had, you know, all the
It was fully reliant on a machine, basically.
Yeah. And now it was time to come to the time where, time to get his affairs in order.
You know, all your life you'd been in and out of hospital, so you'd seen a lot of what doctors can do. So when the doctors come around and they say, look, you know, there's nothing more that we can do, it's time for you to actually prepare that there's a good possibility you're not going to have your husband with you anymore. That must have been a massive shock to you, because there's kind of your lifeline, if you like. So then now you're pulling on something even greater, aren't you?
Yeah, so that same night that they told us that, and you know, I now knew that there was nothing man could do.
That's right.
There's nothing that man could do for Jaya.
Awesome.
So that night I remember praying and still just praying to God for a miracle. But I had come to a place where I just, what else was I going to do? I'd been doing this. I'd been praying. I'd been standing in the gap. I had been warfaring for him. I'd been, you know, laying hands on him daily, you know, praying out to God daily, every single thing that you think you're meant to do. So that night, I had nothing left. I just fell to my knees before the Lord, and I just said, I gave him over to God. That's what I did, basically. And I just said to the Lord, Lord, if it is your will, whether he lives or dies, I had to be okay with it. And I just trusted God fully. I just said to him, to the Lord, I trust you.
Wow.
I trust you to do, completely and wholeheartedly. I just said to him, let your will be done, Father. And then if you choose to take Jaya from me, because he doesn't belong to me, you know, he belonged to our God.
He does.
And I just said to him, you know,
Excuse me, if I'm so entrenched in your story, so I may not be engaging much because I'm seeing, like, even though all these tragedies occurred to you along the way from the time you were born, basically, but you had steadfast parents, but not just that, the hope and the flickers of hope along the way, where your parents didn't give up, so that kind of was instilled in you. You wouldn't give up. Not just that, but also in your childhood. And even though you had all those things going on inside of you, there was still always hope inside of you. And that's what I love about your story. So if I don't appear to be engaged, I am entrenched in your story, because it's such a powerful testimony of overcoming. But we all have those glimmers of hope instilled in us, but you had the strength to be able to hold on to that when you were 15, when you were homeless, when you were getting kicked in and out of home. You know, even when you turn to alcohol and drugs, you know, a lot of people actually, because of my line of work, obviously, a lot of people actually go that extra mile, which is taking their own lives. But for yourself, you found hope along the way. But it's like God, because your parents were going to church as well, is that right?
Yeah, my parents go.
So that kind of faith and hope and love was instilled into you from a young age, without you even being aware. And I do believe that's in all of us. So that's the faith. So even though it sounds like a really well, against the odds kind of.
Yeah.
There was always
Absolutely.
faith, love and hope that was going to always bring you back to the path that you're on now,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
right.
it's so beautiful and so
Yeah, what a
uplifting. And even though
testimony.
you've overcome so much, you've still got so much of a journey ahead of you. So tell us a bit about your future now. You know, where's your husband at?
Yeah,
You know, is he with us? Is he with us?
The very same, like the next night after coming before the Lord and just giving him over to him 100%. The next day, it's an amazing story. The next day, Jaya started to get better.
Wow.
Honestly, and it was just a miracle.
Yeah.
It was, you know, I don't know if it was me giving him over to the Lord or not,
Absolutely.
but, you know, I believe having that faith and
Yeah,
trusting
beautiful
God
it is.
100%, you know, I think in the life and death situation, you've got nothing else to pull on but God.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
You know, but you can't, you know, trusting God, man, it performs,
Beautiful,
honestly,
Adi.
it's miracles.
Yeah.
So that day, and then from the next day onwards, Jaya
Just got better.
started to slowly get better. Then I think it would have been within 10 days of that, he had been discharged from Auckland Hospital. So within 10 days,
That's
the
powerful.
timeline's correct here, he'd been discharged, went to Waikato and started his rehabilitation. And even though that was still a long journey from there to, you know, learning to eat, learning to walk again, everything, he was alive and he is still alive today.
That's so awesome.
So that's
cute.
And another little baby.
What's beautiful too is that, you know, just in wrapping up, and it's been amazing. Thank you so much, Adiana, for sharing your story and so much empowerment for us, and even people who are listening and watching who may be going through extremely tough, difficult times. It's beautiful to hear the testimony of Adiana and many others where they've drawn their strength from. And I think what's beautiful with Jaya too is it wasn't just that he's alive. He's like they're with us here in Australia. He's living a quality of life.
Yes.
And I think to be in a coma for almost 7 weeks, to have to go through a whole lot of rehabilitation and to be living a quality of life and just as strong, if not stronger, than he was before he went in and wasn't well. So that's beautiful,
So
and it's
powerful.
true testament of the power of God and your faith in God.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. Now, Adiana, just in wrapping up and just quickly, who's Adiana today? What do you love? What's your passions?
Well, I love real talk. No, I do. I'm happy to be here. I love church. I love the Lord. He's brought me through, obviously, trials and tribulations and got me where I am today. And I'm probably the best I've ever been. And that's no word of a lie. I'm now married. I have 2 daughters. So we've had another baby since. And we're planted here in Destiny, Brisbane. And
Beautiful.
Why are you hiding away that you do amazing job
I know,
at makeup?
exactly.
Why are you not telling us these beautiful people?
One of your other passions.
Yes.
lots
Please
of
tell
passions.
everybody.
So I love makeup. I'm a makeup artist.
She's great.
Yeah, she's an amazing makeup
She's
artist.
beautiful.
I'm a nail technician. Don't look at my nails at the moment though. And that is my passion. It's my job, but it's my passion as well. I love it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Adiana. And what, just a beautiful night, and we're going to wrap it up tonight. But that's definitely a testimony of overcoming and against all odds. Absolutely against all odds. So if people want to find you, if they live in the Brisbane or the Gold Coast, where can they find you for your makeup artist business?
So I've got a makeup page called Makeup by Adiana.
Beautiful.
There you go.
Yeah.
And for the Australians, it's spelled AR. IANA. We'll put that up, makeup by Ariana.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh,
Thank you,
that's
Adi.
beautiful.
Oh, that was
Beautiful.
amazing.
Yeah.
Definitely amazing night. So that was definitely against all odds. If you were back in Rotorua in those days, that will be in the
Absolutely.
paper.
Yeah.
For
the monthly
sure.
paper.
Front page, back page, middle section, the whole.
No, awesome. Thanks to Adi.
great.
You know, we don't take for granted you sharing
That's
your story
Yeah.
and opening up, but that's
That's
the power
right.
for other people to actually
Yeah.
be able to hear and receive and be encouraged. But you know, if you've got questions coming in or you've got comments that you want to share with Ariana, we'll get those answered, and it will actually allow Ariana to answer those questions on our page. So please don't hesitate to ask if you're going through struggles and you want a private message and you have a specific question for Ariana. Please put those through to our private message on Legacy Real Talk. But that is us for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Now, our next Legacy Real Talk, you know, we are about 6 weeks away from Christmas.
That's right.
Which usually everyone goes, oh, scary. And I think the question is why? Why is it scary? What are the pressures that we have? What are the expectations we think we need to live up to? And so, you know, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that season. Everyone says it's the most wonderful time of the year, but usually everyone's freaking out, wondering how they're going to pay for it or what job they're going to get to pay all their bills off. So we're going to have a little bit of a talk about that next.
That'll be interesting.
Topic.
That'll be great.
And yeah, just a final thought before we close. We'll let Ariana close. Just a final thought of somebody who may be watching or viewers who have are currently going through some difficult times. What's your final?
So
thought
for me,
them?
when I was thinking about today and what I've been through and coming on the show and talking about this, I think for me the biggest thing was trusting God. It really was, because I feel like we all have a sense of faith, especially if you believe in God and you believe that He can do all things are possible. So I think you already have, you know, a sense of faith, but I think trust is important. Trusting God to do what He has planned for your life.
Good, Adi. Beautiful.
And just,
Well said.
allowing Him to
Take control.
Take control,
Let him have it.
let him do what He has planned for your life, because He will never fail.
Beautiful. That's right.
So
That is
lovely.
perfect.
That's so
Thank
good.
you, Ariana.
Yeah.
Well, that is us. Good night. But Legacy Real Talk, our next one is on the 22nd of November.
Yeah.
So keep in touch with us on the page, and we will see you then. Bless you.
Bye.
Bye.